Now that we have learned about routing, let's start linking these pages up. There are two types of pages. One are the non-dynamic pages or the known pages, and second are the dynamic pages. Now, before we start linking and diving more into code, let's first take a step back and ask ourselves, what are links? Now, in our Coffee Connoisseur app, you will find links everywhere. Links are essentially a way that users can route back and forth. They link to different pages. So for example, all the coffee store cards are essentially links. They have links wrapped around them. So when you click on any of the coffee store, it automatically routes to another coffee store page. And if you go back to home, this is another link right here as well. If we were to implement links without Next.js or even React, just pure HTML, we would use something called as a anchor element. And this is popularly known as the A tag. An A tag allows you to create a hyperlink that will allow you to link different pages. And all you need to do is use an href and provide the route you want it to route to. And semantically, browser provides us with this so that each link is clickable and the browser understands as well that it's a link. Next.js also provides us with something similar. It provides us with a React component called link that allows us to change routes easily. Now, the link component is similar to the anchor element itself, but it provides us with a lot more properties out of the box. We will keep exploring link more and more throughout this course as there is a lot to the link component. But for now, let's go back to our diagram. So as I mentioned, for linking, there are two ways you can link pages. So let's get started with this one, the non-dynamic page. That is a known page. In our app Coffee Connoisseur, if I go to a coffee store, this back to home is essentially a known page. A known page is a page that we know about and the route is not going to change. So for example, back to home, the route is essentially / which is the root route. Whereas in case of a dynamic page, which is this one, the route keeps changing. That is, for every coffee store page, it has its own dynamic route and ID. So let's go ahead and implement back to home link. All right, I'm in VS Code right now. And let's go ahead and create a link. Now, if we don't use the link component as a start, but let's just use anchor tag. And if we were to do that, we would just say anchor href pointing to the root and then say back to home. That's the link, right? So if we go to the browser and check it out, right here, let's go ahead and add coffee store /1. And this doesn't really matter because it's a dynamic route. So I'm going to say dynamic. All right. So you can see coffee store page dynamic. And if I hit back to home, notice how this specific icon, which right now is a Vercel SVG, it changes to a loader as if it's trying to refresh the page. So let's go back to home, icon, change, and we are back to home. So that's the difference between a anchor tag and a link component. A link component, when you use it to route to different pages, it's not going to refresh the page, but it's just going to change the route. So let's replace the anchor tag with link and link right here. Now, this is exactly how you would use the link component. As I mentioned, link is similar to the anchor tag itself. So just replacing a with link will do the job itself. For the browser to recognize a specific link, we need it to be an anchor link. So we need to wrap it around with an A tag to back to home as well. So semantically, it makes sense. Now, going back to our page, and again, going back to coffee store, dynamic, and whoops, we do need to import link as well. So let's do that. Let's say link. So the error is gone, which is great. So let's say back to home, and you will see that this icon stays the same because it's not going to reload the page. Back to home, there you go. So it just routed us to home without refreshing the page. And that is one of the benefits of using the link component provided by Next.js. So if you were to use an external link, that is, let's say we were to use HTTP, maybe google.ca, right? Now, link component is a Next.js component. It essentially will link to anything inside the pages directory. That is all the routes that we know about. So if you want to route to an external link, something like this, it doesn't make sense to use the link component. We can just rely on the anchor tag itself and use that instead. But when it comes to actually linking any routes within your application, the link component is beneficial. And one of the reasons why I say that is because link component provides us with a lot of other features. If you go back to the docs and scroll down, you will notice that the link component actually accepts the following props. So you can see that an external link won't be able to take advantage of a link component and the benefits of it, right? All right, so link component does provide us with a lot of different props, one of them being href that we already took a look at. And there's a lot more to it, which we will keep exploring throughout this course. But two of my favorite properties of the link component, one of them being the scroll prop. So the scroll prop essentially scrolls the user to the top of the page, even though the link is at the bottom of the page. For example, let's click on Bluestone Lake. And this is the last row in this page, and there is a bit of a scroll right here. If I click on this coffee store, and if we click on back to home, then the user is going to go all the way to the top of the page because the link component has this behavior by default. So if I do that, see, that's the beauty of the scroll prop. We can always opt out of this functionality if we don't want it. For example, scroll is actually true by default, but we can say false and then it will disable it. But in our case, we're just going to keep it and remove this property for now. The second prop that I really like is the prefetch prop. Anytime you use a link component onto the page and you specify a route, in our case, let's say it's a slash route, right? Now, this page maps to index.js, right? Because it's the root page itself. What link component is going to do is it's going to, by default, download the contents of this page in advance. So whenever the user clicks on back to home, that page is already downloaded and the user doesn't need to wait for it. And that really makes Next.js applications really fast. Now, again, there's a lot more to link component that we'll explore throughout this course. But for now, let's move on to dynamic pages.